Hey everybody, Mike here coming at you from the wall of metal. It's been a long time since I've done a video, so those of you who might subscribe to my channel or are familiar with who I am and have missed me for a while, I'm back. I'm a little bit late in getting this video out. This is going to be my favorite albums of 2019, and I wanted to get it done before February, and I'm just going to get it in. So I've been trying to take everything in the last couple of weeks, just to to make a fair assessment, and just to let you know these are my favorite albums of 2019. Not necessarily what I think are the best or the most critically acclaimed. I think that my list is going to be pretty similar to a lot you've seen out there. I do have a few on here that I'm proud to say I haven't seen very many other people talk about, and I think you're going to see a lot of familiar albums on here too. So I don't have anything scripted. This is kind of off the cuff, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about each release because I want to try to get this done. I've got 25, and then one honorable mention that I want to throw in. So, and what I kind of wanted to do is, for the purists out there, are not going to like this, but for this year, I've done something that I didn't think I'd ever do, and that is I've done a lot of digital listening. My son kind of turned me on a while back to Apple Music, and I got to say, despite my reluctance to get involved in digital media, I think it's great. It lets you learn about a lot of different artists that you might not otherwise hear or know about, and it saves a lot of money because what I tried to do toward the end of the year was I identified my favorite albums and I tried to get them on at least some form of media. And I've recently gotten back into LP collecting, and those of you that collect albums know that buying new vinyl is an expensive hobby. So not ashamed of listening to some music on digital media, and I still buy the product to support the bands. And as you can see behind me, I've got thousands of CDs. They're spread all around over my room. I've got lots of albums, so I'm not ashamed, and I don't think it discredits the artists at all. I think it gives a lot of artists a lot of exposure that they wouldn't ordinarily get. So that being said, I do want to show you some of the things that I've got. So we're going to start with just outside the top 25. An honorable mention. I want to show it just because I bought it, and I bought it because I got it for fairly inexpensive price when I was ordering some of the other ones. And I've had albums by this band. I've got a couple in there on the wall back behind me. First vinyl album I've had from them, and this is a band that's they should be one of my favorites. I mean, back in the late '90s and early 2000s, they I think carried the flame for the new wave of traditional heavy metal. I was more of a thrash guy, so a lot of the traditional metal bands that were waving that flag were kind of under my radar, and I had always knew about these guys, and like I said, they've been around forever. They just were never one of my favorites, but I like what they do, and I really like this album. So let's just show it, and that's Hammerfall with Dominion on Napalm Records. This is a really great album. It's got a great gatefold photo in the middle, great liner notes, production's great. And listening to this today kind of reminded me of why I enjoyed collecting albums for a long time. So great release. Most of you probably heard it. So it's my honorable mention. Now I got 25 others. Now here's the deal. I've got I own physical copies of most of them. I've got four, maybe five at the most, that I'm going to show you. I printed off a picture off the internet of the album cover so I can have something to show you, but I either don't have the physical copy yet, or it's not been ordered, or it's not been delivered to me yet. So I want to get those out of the way first, and we'll just start with one that really could be in my top 10 this year. That was that good, and a band that I didn't know much about. I learned about this band because I've subscribed to Apple Music, and through its recommendations, this is a band that I found, and this is a great album. It's power power metal that's more toward the kind of thrashy side, like Iced Earth, Nevermore, Metal Church, that Vicious Rumors, that kind of thing. Um, I've only seen one other person mention this album. It's on Scott Waters' list, so I'm proud to say that he and I have, I think, good similar taste in music. This is Realms of Time by the band Diviner, and I believe they are from Germany. I think somewhere over there in Europe, Germany, Sweden. Anyway, um, this is great, and if you've never heard of them before, and you like good power metal that's not too symphonic but more edgier and guitar oriented, I highly recommend you check out Diviner. It is great. Okay, this one is a band that I've listened to for a long time. I'm not a big black metal fan. I just don't get into it that much. But I do like the more established artists that have been around for a while, and I like black metal that's got a little bit of a uniqueness to it, or at least the whole traditional Norwegian burn the churches down black metal stuff. Just it's not for me. I don't really care for it. I think it gets monotonous. So I like a little bit of variety in my black metal, and that's why I've always liked this band. And this is Borknagar, and their 2019 release is True North, and it's got a lot of progressive elements in it and really good songwriting. ICS Vortex is a fantastic vocalist, and I recommend that album if you like black metal. Next one I'm going to show is on a majority of the lists I've seen this year. This is the top album, and I can understand why. It's fantastic. It flows very well. The songwriting is really good. Musicianship is top notch, and it's it could have easily made my list, but there are other albums that I personally enjoyed more. But this is a great record. This is Hidden History of the Human Race, and it is Blood Incantation. So, probably one of, if not the best death metal release of 2019, in my opinion. And then the next to last one, because I've got one in my top 10 list that I don't physically have yet. So I've got one more picture that I'm going to have to show you later on. But the last one that I don't have yet, I've sat down, I've listened to this bits and pieces of it a few times. I think if I sat down and actually listened to it from front to back in its entirety and took it in a few times, it would probably have been much higher. And this is number one on a lot of people's list too. And I've always liked everything this guy has done, everything from his band projects to solo projects to when he first time I ever found out who he was when he sang on the Steve Vai album. And many of you know already then that would be Devin Townsend with Empath. Just a hodgepodge of everything. I mean, there's something for everybody on this album. There's literally any kind of genre mixed together that you can think of. So progressive songwriting, delivery, great record. Could have been much higher. Okay, so now the rest of everything, again, in no particular order until I get to my top 10. These are just physical copies that I do have. So I'm going to start with, just got them stacked up here. We'll just go through the bunch. Let's do with, what we got here? This is The Ruins of Fading Light by Crypt Sermon. Back of it there. Got a little bit of a glare there. I believe these guys are from Philadelphia. They're pretty much classified as a doom band, but I am intrigued more by their new wave of traditional heavy metal, or even new wave of British heavy metal sprinklings that they have throughout there. It is kind of a doomy sound, but again, straightforward hardcore doom metal has never been one of my favorites. And I couldn't even tell you some of the more off the wall, real doomish bands. I mean, I don't, Black Sabbath, is it doom? Candlemass, yeah, Candlemass is doom, but Candlemass first came out. They came out kind of with that wave of that new metal back in the early '80s, and it wasn't so much the doomy sludgy. It's not sludgy. It was it just kind of had those slow, powerful drudgy riffs, but there was a lot of other technicality and melody and a lot of other elements to it that made it more, I think, of a new wave of heavy metal movement than doom. So anyway, great album. Great songwriting, great vocals, great guitar work. Very enjoyable listen. I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to check out a new American metal band. Support Crypt Sermon. Then here we got more guys that have been around for an awful long time. This is a really good record too. I just maybe didn't listen to this one enough as much as some of the others on my list, but this is Soilwork with Verkleiten. I think I said that right. And of course, Soilwork is one of the more senior new wave of Swedish death metal bands, although they've kind of abandoned the death metal flavor now, and there's a lot more technicality and diversity in their sound. But it's just an enjoyable listen from start to finish. You can put it on. I don't get bored with it. You put it on in the car, and it just kind of goes. And you know, I can't really think of any standout tracks that stand alone. But it's one of those records that you can put on to listen to it and think, man, this is really good heavy metal, and I like it. So in there, let's see what we got next. Okay, this one again has been at the top of a lot of lists, and it's the only other death metal album I consider death metal album on my list. Not that I like death metal, but you know, I'm more of a power traditional thrash kind of guy. But this is really good. They've not been one of my favorite bands, but this album, you know, got a lot of hype this year. It's been on a lot of top. It's atop a lot of people's lists, and it's Death Atlas, Cattle Decapitation. I think it might be the album cover of the year. I really like the artwork on it. I think if I had to pick between this one and say Blood Incantation, I like the vocal diversity that Cattle Decapitation had. The lead vocalist at least has some diversity to his delivery, and I think when he gets in that upper register, it sounds really interesting to me, and I like something a little more than just the death growl. And there's not a lot of that vocal diversity with Blood Incantation. Musically, though, I think Blood Incantation has more interesting riffs. The thing about this Death Atlas that really got me was it's just such controlled chaos. I mean, the drumming. I don't know if it's just studio technology today or the talent of these new drummers, or I'm not a drummer, so I don't know what the tricks are, but it's like a machine gun. I mean, it really gets you. And, you know, I like in my death metal a band that can take all that chaos and contain it and hold it in, and it doesn't get loose. It doesn't fall out of place. It just kind of flows, and it's an enjoyable listening experience. What we got next? We've got, okay. So, old band that's not been on this, well, they've had a couple of reunited efforts, I think, but as far as putting out new music, this is their first album, I believe, in 23 years, I think it was. And that's Zentrix, Bury the Pain. I think I read somewhere recently where they're kind of Britain's version of Metallica. I don't know that I agree with that. The song on here that I really like, There Will Be Consequences, I was listening to that in the car just before I came home tonight, and it had a real Annihilator vibe to it, I thought. But again, I mean, two of the four original members back in this project, straightforward thrash. If you like thrash metal, I'm sure you'd like it. Zentrix, Bury the Pain. And also kind of along that that same kind of style. These guys have put out fantastic albums the last few years. Again, this one could have easily been higher on my list, but this is Exhumer with Hostile Defiance. High quality thrash metal. Again, it's one of those albums that you know it's not going to disappoint you. If you like thrash, you're going to put this on and you're going to bang your head and you're going to throw the goat. Okay, that's the CDs. Now I'm going to show, these are all records that I bought. Again, in no real random order. Just going to grab them and kind of go. This is one, the first one I'm going to show. This is one that a lot of people have liked. A lot of younger people like it. I wasn't sure about it, and then I decided to, really give it a listen digitally, and I listened to it. There's no reason for me not to like this. I mean, it's really good. It's basically kind of a modern hardcore with some, I think, traditional thrash elements, and I like hardcore. I like thrash. It The vocals are kind of more metalcore, and that was kind of the reason I first thought I might not be too into it, because a lot of the screamo metalcore vocals today, I just cannot get into. But the more I listened to this, the more I really liked it. So I found it for a great price online, and I ordered it. And that's Knocked Loose, a different shade of blue. I haven't played this yet on vinyl. Interesting to Interested to see how it translates onto record. I've never had like a hardcore um, metalcore album on vinyl, but if you like Hatebreed, you like good heavy thrashy breakdowns. This doesn't have these drudging breakdowns. It's got more moshy thrashy breakdowns in it, and it sounds really good. So I like it. We got next here. Okay. Um, Again, any of these albums that are outside of my top 10 could have easily made the top 10. And there's just been so many great albums this year. This one, when this first came out, I wasn't real high on it. But here toward the end of the year, I started to listen to it a little bit more because I saw that it was showing up on a lot of people's lists. So, well, let me revisit it, give it another shot. And when I did that, I found I enjoyed it so much more. I really like the band. I really like what they've done since they've kind of come back out and started putting music out again. Anyway, it's Diamond Head, Coffin Train. Everybody knows who Diamond Head is. If you don't, you're probably new to metal, and you need to learn that were it not for Diamond Head, there would be no Metallica. Really good record. Not sure if I like it as much as the self-titled that came out in 2018, 2017, a couple of years ago anyway, I think. But the guy that sings for Diamond Head now is one of the best singers in metal. His vocals are astounding, and this has got everything you'd want for your traditional heavy metal riffs and solos and songwriting. So really good. What's next here? Okay, another newer U.S. band. I think they're out of maybe Arizona. And this is, I can't really think of names, but this is kind of a second project. A guy, he's in another, like a more death metal arena band called Gate Creeper. But this is Spirit Adrift. The album is Divided by Darkness. See on the back there. I think again more kind of similar to a Crypt Sermon that I showed earlier. There's kind of a doomy element to it, but it's far from doom metal. It's certainly got more traditional heavy metal flavoring to it, and just a really good record. You know, it's one of those bands that I found on digital media, and sought out the record, and I really like it. So if you've never heard of Spirit Adrift, give them a chance. I think you'll like them too. Right here, okay. It's been the year of the old regime, or the old guard, or the veterans, and there's been a lot of I wouldn't say controversy, but it's up for debate as to whether the original incantation of this band was better or what. As far as I'm concerned, everything they've done in the last few years has been the best stuff that they've done since a long time ago. And that is Queensryche, and this is The Verdict. This is just, Todd La Torre is stellar. I've listened to things that Jeff Tate has done post Queensryche departure, and anything that Queensryche with Todd La Torre has done to me is leagues ahead of stuff that Jeff has put out. Todd La Torre I feel like he's injected new life into the band, and this album really rocks, and some moments of it are just straight heavy. And I think the verdict is, in my opinion, um, my favorite Queensryche album since Empire, and I think that's saying a lot. Uh, what we got next? Okay, up next, again, another young up and coming U.S. power metal band. Not sure where they're from, but this was a band that I hadn't heard a lot about. And when I finally did kind of see them on social media, I checked them out. It was really good. And that's Paladin, the album Ascension. They're signed to Prosthetic Records, is the label they're on. This is got a lot of elements of traditional power metal. If you like Dragon Force and things like that, then you'll like what Paladin does. But there's also a lot of crunchy, uh, thrashy um, metal elements to it, like I mentioned earlier with whoever I talked about that said they did that with Diviner. That they just have some crunchy guitar riffs and galloping rhythms. If you like thrash and you like more of a thrash injection into your power metal, you'll enjoy Paladin. So I'm looking forward to more from them, and I'd really like to catch them live. I think they're a great up and coming young American metal band. And I think this is the last one just outside of what I've picked as my top 10. This one could have been in there. We'll call this 10 and a half. And this one was one that I'm kind of ashamed of myself that I hadn't heard of this earlier. I believe this came out in February, so it came out really early, but I just didn't know it was coming out there. It's a project by a guy who's been around a while, who's one of my favorite metal guys, and that's Glenn Drover, who I learned about years ago in a band called Edelin. Edelin. I never was sure how you really pronounced it, but Glenn and his brother Sean have gone on to glory in metal. Glenn has played, I believe he played with King Diamond, and he's played in Testament, and I want to say both at one point played with Megadeth. Sean drummed for Megadeth. Um, Sean has been the drummer in Active Defiance, and lots of other groups. But anyway, this is Glenn's project, Walls of Blood. The album is Imperium, and this is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Um, Picked this album up online for a dirt cheap price. My only disappointment in it is it doesn't have any liner notes, which is especially unusual and kind of a piss off when the project consists of guest musicians and guest vocalists, and there's a slew of guest vocalists on here. Todd LaTorre, who I just talked about being one. Ripper Owens is on here, and the Ripper Owens track, Tarnished Dream. Oh my goodness! If Glenn made this a solid band project, please sign Ripper Owens to be your vocalist. It's great. And then I can't think of the names of some of the other guys, but some established metal vocalists appear on this. This is just fantastic power metal. Again, that power metal that kind of, it's not quite thrash, but it's not that noodly, European sounding symphonic-y power metal. I like that kind of stuff, but it's just not my favorite, which is why you're not going to see any of those on my list. But this is great heavy metal. Walls of Blood, Imperium. Check it out. Okay, so now that's going to get us to what I've identified as my 10 favorite albums of the year. And we're going to go kind of in reverse order here. So, let's start with number 10. I've seen this on some internet lists, but a lot of people don't know who these guys are. I know who they are because I had the great fortune of meeting them a few years ago when I went to Ohio. Well, I went to Covington, Kentucky, which is right across from Cincinnati, Ohio. I went to see a Viking show. Viking had gotten put out an album out few years ago and was doing a few dates, And this was a local Cincinnati, Dayton, Cincinnati metal band that was on the bill. And I met the drummer out in the parking lot, and he introduced me to the rest of the band, and I consider these guys friends. Um, Met him several times. Try to keep in touch with them, and I love what they do. And they are War Curse, and this is their album Eradication. This is their label, or uh, it's on Zvart Records, which metal fans know the label. So I wouldn't, I guess, let's say major label debut, but this is their professional label debut album, and it's the future of thrash. It's great, catchy, um, heavy thrash metal. And if you like thrash, you're gonna like War Curse. Highly recommend you check them out. And there's a slight tie-in from this band into my number 9. Um, the bass player who he recorded on this album, I don't know that he's going to tour with the band anymore, but he's a veteran metal guy. He's been around a lot. His name is Jason V. Brooks, and he is the bass player in this band now. This is another band who this is their first album in 27 years. This is a band that got my attention about that many years ago. When I got a compilation album of a bunch of different kind of death metal releases, and I heard the song on there from this band, and I thought, oh my God, that is one of the heaviest, most brutal things I've ever heard, and been a fan ever since. And one of the coolest things I think I've ever done was courtesy of a buddy of mine in War Curse, who I just showed, gave me some clues and basically kind of invited me to a top secret um, rehearsal show. It wasn't billed as a show, and for contractual reasons, it couldn't be billed, and it was free. It was just basically, invite people who know. We all met up at some club in Dayton, and the band was doing a warm up for doing their reunion gigs, and got to meet the guys in the band. And it was just a fantastic experience. And anyway, I'm sure some of you might know by now, when I said 27 years since their last album, it is Exhorder. This is More in the Southern Skies. This is fantastic. I don't even want to get into the debate of who came first. Pantera, Exhorder, doesn't matter. If you like heavy groove metal that is more thrashing and it's going to slice your throat, then this album is for you. The guitar riffing on this thing is fantastic. Even reminds me of some the last few Exodus albums, or just the sharp guitar riffing is phenomenal on this. There's a lot of diversity on this record too. It's not just gonna pummel you, but when it does pummel you, break out the anvil. Great album, Exhorder. So that's number 9. Number 8. Okay, so 8 through whenever could probably be probably it could have. I mean, any of these albums could have been reverse order. So a lot of these just are familiar bands that I've loved. Anything they do, I'm going to be happy with. They just weren't quite enough to get at the top of my list, or maybe I just wanted somebody different. I don't know. But anyway, great albums. So we're just going to go through them because you know who they are. So at number 8, this is The Wings of War with Overkill. This is like the first Overkill vinyl record that I've owned since, I think the only other vinyl that I own is Taking Over. Man, I'd like to find some of those old, the first few Overkill albums on vinyl. And I'm just going to say, some talking about Overkill. I think if you had to list a best 3-stretch release from any metal band of all time, I'd challenge anybody to say that Taking Over, Hello from the Gutter, and then Years of Decay, that 3-album stretch Under the Influence. It's not Hello from the Gutter. That was a single. Shame on me. Um, Taking Over, Under the Influence, and Years of Decay. Those are three of the best albums in sequence of all time. Better than, I think, Metallica, Testament, Exodus, any band you want. Those three albums by Overkill are three of the best metal releases ever. I'll fight you if you disagree. So we got Overkill. What did we say? That was 8. I think 7. Again, this is number 1 on a lot of people's list. Don't really need to talk about it. I mean, it's good. It's Death Angel, Humanicide. Everything Death Angel's done since they started putting albums back out again has been fantastic. Put this on and you just listen to all of it before it's over. Just for whatever reason, this one just hadn't grabbed me as much as some of the others so far. Not sure why. But anyway, we got Death Angel. What we say? That was 7, 10, 9, 8, 7. What we got here? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm not sure where we're at. We're not keeping track. But behind them, we've got another. This is the new Flotsam and Jetsam, The End of Chaos. And fantastic. I mean, they're at the top of their game. They're releasing great album after great album. Love it. Played it an awful lot. And just not disappointing in any capacity. Okay. So, what we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'm in the top 5 unless I really messed up. So here we go. Top 5. Don't have this one yet. I'm patiently waiting for it to arrive. It'll probably come tomorrow. But this is a band that I kind of learned about this year. Again, digital downloading and social media. Dirty old school thrash metal. A lot of people like to label this stuff as crossover. I don't think it sounds crossover at all. I think it owes more to old Celtic Frost. I say Celtic, not Celtic. I've just always said Celtic. I think it owes more to old Celtic Frost and Venom than it does anything crossover. And this is Beyond the Walls of Desolation by High Command, an American metal band. Very similar to Power Trip, which again, I don't really consider that as crossover as much as I do, traditional heavy metal. I hear the elements of crossover in there, but for me, crossover is always going to be, Cro-Mags, DRI, that kind of stuff, which this sounds nothing like. Nothing, not a bit. It's black and darkened, venomous. It's got great riffs. It's got those kind of riffs that when they kick in, you can feel yourself grinning when you hear it and banging your head. And that's what really got me about it. And that's why it's high on my list. So I highly recommend you check out High Command. I'm waiting for that to come in. All right. And this one just came in today. I was glad to get this today. Not seen this on anybody's list. A lot of people, I don't know if anybody really, except, the hardcore social media thrashers, heard a lot about this, but that's how I learned about them. Somebody put it on one of the sites I follow on Facebook, and I listened to it, and as soon as I listened to it, I got that reaction I just talked about with High Command, banging my head. I could feel myself grinning. I love the riffing. It's a style of thrash metal that I really like. It's got that bouncy, thrashy, it's kind of a combination of the best of the West Coast thrash and the East Coast with that really kind of SOD-ish, nuclear assaultish bass that I really like. And this is Fusion Bomb, and the album is Concrete Jungle. This is great. They're from somewhere not in the United States. I'm not sure what country they're from, but it's not the most original album you're going to hear, as far as style. but the songwriting and the riffs that they write, the music and the vocal delivery, it just I really enjoy it, and I found myself listening to this a lot, which is why it is in my top five. At number four, again, that's Fusion Bond with Concrete Jungle. All right, so I'm getting kind of the nitty gritty here. Top three, again, these are my favorites. Um, I really liked this album. I was excited to hear that they were going to put a new album out. I didn't get into these guys a whole lot throughout the years, but you cannot debate their influence on all that is heavy metal now. And you know, with this whole new wave of traditional heavy metal rise, you can't go wrong if you go with one of the originators. So this is Angel of Light by Angel Witch, and this is great. Um, I've seen this on a few lists. You know, it is what it is. The production's not the greatest given the technology we have today, and I think that might have been on purpose. It has kind of an older, I won't say darker, but it's got that sound that makes it sound, you know, genuine, like it was, you know, an '80s heavy metal album, and it's really good. The only disappointment I've had with it, this is the second copy I've had to receive. My first copy had all kinds of skips, and it would get stuck in the grooves, and it just didn't play worth a shit. And I was really disappointed because this was one of the first records, vinyl records, that I wanted. I really wanted this on vinyl, so I got a replacement. And as soon as I played it, wouldn't you know, a lot of the same. And I was just decided I was going to send it back and just get a CD copy of it. But I gave it another listen tonight, actually, and for whatever reason it played, so I'm decided I'm going to keep it. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, if you watch this, and if anybody who has this on vinyl, if they've had any issues with their version, let me know. I'd appreciate it. All right, so that's number three. Number two, man, it's again, it's the old guard. Um, you know, a lot of times when bands come back and it's not the all the original members of the band, a lot of, you know, I'm not sure that's really like a reunion, or you know, they're back as much as he's back with some new guys. You know, I kind of wanted to think that with this album, but the group of musicians that has amassed to become now this band is fantastic, and this album is great. And I didn't think it was going to be one of my favorite albums of the year, because quite honestly, the band's never been one of my favorite bands. But as soon as I listened to this, I was very interested in it. I thought it sounded great as far as the production. Um, and what I like about this album is when I listen to it, it's almost like an amusement park ride, or you know, a roller coaster. You know, you have that anticipation, the build up, and then you get that drop, and then you're constantly wondering what's going to be coming next, and each song flows just, you know, flawlessly, and it's just a great record, and I enjoy it more and more with each listen. And that is Revelations of Oblivion by Possessed, which is pretty much Jeff Becerra with a bunch of new guys. Um, but it's great. You know, his vocal style is very unique, and he doesn't sound a lot like, you know, anybody else. And this album is just a fantastic album. Um, and I think if you like thrash metal, a lot of people, that's death metal. This is, to me, this is not death metal. Possessed was never death metal. They have a kind of a darker tone, and their lyrical content might, you know, lean more toward that side. But this is straightforward, ripping thrash is what it is. But you know, there's not a whole lot of the kind of moshing. You know, I'm a fan of the mosh riff, the the throwdown riff, you know, kind of thing. I like the circle pit slow, bringing the slow riff mid pace. That's my thing. And there's not a lot of this on here, which is again why I'm kind of surprised that I enjoy it so much. But there's just enough diversity on here that they make it interesting. So it's not just total, you know, pounding your head with thrash. Great record though. Highly recommend if you've not heard it. or if you're on, the fence about whether you like it or not, I highly recommend it. All right, so that was number two. It was tough, and my number one is going to come. It's going to be a surprise to a lot of people, and a lot of metal purists out there are probably going to look at me and go, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And if they don't like it, that was Dave Chappelle said, they can kiss my ass. And why is that? Because fuck them. That's why. It's my video, my taste. I was as shocked as anybody else. I could not believe when I finally decided that this was my favorite album of 2019 that this would be it. And it came out of nowhere. In fact, when it was released, I really wasn't even interested. I really wasn't even going to listen to it because I haven't really cared a whole lot about this band throughout the years. They've been around a long time. Very original, genre bending. A lot of fans have a love-hate relationship with them, and not a whole lot in the middle. I know a lot of people out there are gonna, compared to everything else I've shown, think how, and believe me, I'm just as surprised as anybody else. But when I decided to listen to this album, from the moment I pressed play to the end, and every time I listen to it afterwards, it just grabs me and drags me in, and I love it. I love. There's nothing about this record that I don't like, and it had to be number one, because very infrequently does an album come out that I listen to from start to finish, and every bit of it holds my attention. And with each listen, I find something more that I didn't notice the first time, something I didn't maybe think I liked. I like it a lot more as I listen more frequently, and this album just has not disappointed me. I don't really want to get into a critical analysis of it. I'll just tell you that I love to listen to it, and it's got to be my favorite album of the year, and I'm just as surprised as anybody else. But it is The Nothing by Korn. Yeah, there's not. I don't know what to say other than there's a lot of diversity to what goes on here. I like music, and I like an album that's not just going to be one solid thing all the way through. And there's enough elements of different things on this that I think just a casual fan would like. If you've never really listened to Korn and you're not sure what they do, but you like hard, heavy music, I think you'll like this. But it's just a fantastic album. It channels a lot of emotion, a lot of angst. I think Jonathan Davis delivers, I think, his best performance in the history of Korn and his career. And that came at a high price because, he's been through an awful lot the last year and a half. You can research that if you're interested. But the guitar playing is top notch. The songwriting is there, and the diversity is there. And on this particular album, when the band plays heavy, it is heavy. There's a song on the album, one of my favorite songs of the year, is Idiosyncrasy, and it's straight vulgar display of power Pantera. And say what you will about Pantera, but that's one of my favorite albums of all time. So when I hear that heavy guitar riff on a Korn album, I'm thinking, man, they have amped it up. It's just, I can't say enough about this album. I've never seen them. I'm going to see them here on Tuesday the 4th in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it will be the first time I've ever seen Korn. And because of this record, I am so hyped to go and see that show. And I just have a whole brand new appreciation for this band. And not only is this album my favorite album of 2019, I think this album is one of the best albums I've heard ever. And when I heard this, it was so good that it was almost as if I was listening to Korn for the first time. Because if you like the band at all, you know what you're going to get with them, and you know what their sound is. But this time around, it was just so polished when it needed to be polished. It was so heavy when it needs to be heavy. that it sounded so fresh and new, yet yet um, I can't get the word that I really want, but comforting and familiar, I guess. When Korn does what they do that makes them a heavy band, um, yeah, it just for whatever reason it got me. It really got me, and I love the record, and I'm not ashamed to say that it's my favorite album of 2019. So I took up more time than I really wanted to because I talk a lot. It's all right, it's my video. Um, but anyway, if you watch this, throw me a comment. Let me know what your lists are. Let me know what you think. You know, just let's talk about metal because it's my favorite thing. So I hope you've all done your lists. 2020 is going to be a great year. We've already seen some great stuff come out, and the new Annihilator just smokes. I can't wait for Demons and Wizards. A New Testament song dropped today. The album cover, the picture of the album dropped today. That looks like it's going to be fantastic. And 2019 was a great year, and so hard to really pick your favorites. 2020 is going to be like that too, man. Metal is in a good place. So best wishes to all of you. Hope you had a great 2019. Hope your 2020 is fantastic. And I'm gonna leave you with this. Let them know you're metal. Bang your head, throw the goat, and I'll see you later.